Sometimes, a person can spend a lifetime haunted by an apple pie. I never thought much about fate. Some people believed life was a carefully written story, every chapter planned out by some invisible hand. Me? I figured life was more like a bakery, full of surprises, sometimes sweet, sometimes a total mess. It was the fall of 1965, and I was a young man working at a small family-owned bakery in Chicago. The place was nothing fancy, just a cozy little shop where the smell of cinnamon and warm bread wrapped around you like a hug from your grandmother. My job? Not glamorous. I mopped floors, wiped counters, and occasionally got to flip a donut in the fryer. But I liked it. It was honest work, and on slow afternoons, I'd lean against the counter and watch people come and go, each with their own little story. That particular afternoon, the bell above the door jingled, and in walked a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, wearing a faded blue dress and the kind of nervous expression that made you want to ask if she was lost. She had soft brown hair pulled into a ponytail, but it was her eyes that caught my attention. They darted around the shop, landing on the glass display case where the golden apple pies sat, fresh from the oven. She stood there for a long time, biting her lip, fingers twitching inside her coat pocket. I'd seen that look before, the look of someone who wanted something but wasn't sure they could afford it. I stepped forward, wiping my hands on my apron. "Miss, you look like someone in the middle of a very serious debate." She startled, glancing up at me. "What?" I gestured to the pie she'd been staring at. "You versus your wallet. Who's winning?" Her cheeks flushed. "It's for my mother. She's sick. Apple pie is her favorite, but She hesitated, then opened her palm. A few crumpled coins lay there, nowhere near enough. She sighed. "Never mind. I shouldn't have come in." Before she could turn to leave, I reached behind the counter, grabbed a fresh pie, and set it in front of her. "Tell your mom it's on the house." Her eyes widened. "Oh no, I can't." "Sure you can," I interrupted with a grin. "Just promise me something." She hesitated. "What?" I smirked. "Someday, when you get the chance, pay it forward." She stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. But there was something in her expression, something almost knowing, like she was keeping a secret. She took the pie carefully, as if it were something fragile. "All right," she said softly. "One day I'll return the favor." I chuckled, thinking nothing of it. People said things like that all the time. I watched her leave, and by the end of my shift, I had already pushed the encounter to the back of my mind. After all, it was just a pie. Or so I thought. 52 years later, I barely remembered that day in the bakery. Life had a way of sweeping us along, carrying us through decades like fallen leaves in the wind. I had moved away, joined the army, become a teacher, and eventually retired in a quiet little town in Texas where the biggest excitement was the occasional debate with my neighbor about whether squirrels were a menace or a blessing. They were a menace. No question. I thought my days of surprises were long over. I was wrong. It was a crisp November morning when my life took an unexpected turn. I was out walking my dog, Murphy, a scruffy little mutt with the attitude of a king, when he spotted a squirrel and decided, rather dramatically, that this was the moment he had been training for his entire life. The leash yanked. My feet tangled. And before I knew it, gravity won. The sidewalk met me with a thud, and the last thing I saw before blacking out was Murphy, wagging his tail triumphantly, as if he had personally conquered the squirrel kingdom. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines and the sterile scent of antiseptic. A nurse stood beside me, adjusting in 4 drip. "Well, look who's back from the land of unconsciousness," she said, smirking. I groaned. Where am I? And more importantly, who do I sue for making hospital food taste like cardboard? She chuckled. "You're at St. Mary's Hospital, and as for your bill, it's already been taken care of." That got my attention. My brain, still foggy, struggled to process her words. "By who?" I asked. She pulled a folded note from her pocket and handed it to me. I opened it, my fingers trembling slightly. It was just one sentence. "One day, I'll return the favor." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The room felt suddenly too small, too quiet. 52 years. 52 years, and those words had found their way back to me. I gripped the note tighter, my mind racing. Could it really be her? The nurse watched my expression carefully, then leaned in and whispered, "You should talk to the hospital director." And just like that, my quiet retirement had turned into a mystery. Who had repaid my kindness after all these years? And why did I suddenly feel like I was about to learn a lesson that had been waiting for me my whole life? My fingers tightened around the note, my mind spinning in 100 directions at once. I could still see her, the young woman in the blue dress, the nervous way she had counted her coins, the way her smile held something just beyond my understanding. And now, after more than 5 decades, those same words had found their way back to me. One day, I'll return the favor. The nurse had mentioned the hospital director, and that was enough to light a fire in me. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for answers to fall in my lap. "Take me to her," I said, my voice more forceful than I intended. The nurse arched an eyebrow but nodded. A few minutes later, I found myself being wheeled down a long hallway, past rooms filled with hushed conversations and the occasional beeping of heart monitors. My heart thudded against my ribs with every turn of the wheels. Finally, we stopped in front of an office door. The nurse knocked twice, then pushed it open. Inside, behind a large wooden desk, sat a woman in her late 60s. Her silver-streaked brown hair was pulled back neatly, her deep green eyes studying me with quiet amusement. There was something familiar about her, but my brain wasn't connecting the dots just yet. She smiled. "Well, Mr. Carter, you sure do know how to keep things interesting." I squinted. "You know me?" She leaned forward, resting her hands on the desk. "We met once. A long time ago. In a little bakery in Chicago." The air left my lungs. My mind scrambled through old memories, like flipping through the pages of a book I hadn't touched in years. Then, in an instant, I saw her, not as the confident woman in front of me, but as the young girl standing in front of my bakery counter, staring at an apple pie she couldn't afford. My breath caught. "Clara?" She nodded, her smile widening. "Took you long enough." I let out a stunned laugh, shaking my head. I can't believe this. You were that girl." "I was." I rubbed a hand over my face, trying to process the impossible. "But why? Why pay my hospital bill after all these years?" She studied me for a long moment, then said, "Because you changed my life, Frank." I stared at her dumbfounded. "With a pie?" She chuckled. "Not just the pie, the kindness. That day, you had no idea what I was going through. You didn't ask questions, you didn't judge. You just helped, and that one act set something in motion." She took a deep breath, and her voice softened. "That apple pie was the last meal my mother ever ate." The room fell silent. My heart clenched. "She was sick," Clara continued. "Really sick. We couldn't afford much back then, but I wanted to give her something she loved before she left this world. You made that possible. That moment, it stayed with me. It made me want to spend my life helping people the way you helped me." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "So I worked," she went on. "I studied. I became a doctor. And eventually, the director of this hospital." She smiled. "And when I saw your name on the patient list, I knew it was my turn to return the favor." I exhaled sharply, shaking my head in disbelief. "So let me get this straight. I accidentally created a doctor?" Clara laughed. "Let's just say you nudged me in the right direction." I stared at her for a long moment, then chuckled. "All these years, I thought I was just a guy who made decent pies. Turns out, I saved lives." She grinned. "Turns out." And for the first time in a long time, I understood what people meant when they said kindness had a way of coming full circle. After that day, Clara and I became more than just a hospital director and an old man with a bruised ego. We became friends. She visited often, always with an apple pie in hand. "It's only fair," she'd say, grinning. "You bought me one. I owe you a lifetime supply." "At this rate," I joked one afternoon, cutting into a warm slice, "I'll be made of apples by the end of the year." She laughed, shaking her head. Just don't fall in the street again trying to get another one. No promises. The weeks turned into months. She told me about her late husband, her children, and the grandkids who kept her busy. I told her about my old teaching days, my army years, and the time I nearly burned my house down trying to deep fry a turkey. That story had her laughing so hard, she nearly choked on her coffee. Then, one evening, as we sat on my porch watching the sunset, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Frank, do you ever think about legacy? About what we leave behind?" I nodded, staring out at the sky. I used to think it was about big things. Buildings, money, making a name for yourself. But now, I glanced at her and smiled. Now I think it's about the small things. A kind word, a moment of generosity, even a simple apple pie. Her eyes shone. I think so too. That night, after she left, I sat alone for a long time, thinking about the strange, beautiful way life had brought us back together. Most people assume that grand gestures are what change the world. But sometimes it's the quiet, ordinary moments that leave the biggest impact. A shared meal, a small act of kindness, a single decision to help someone, just because you can. I never became famous. I never made millions. But in some small way, I had left a mark. And in return, life had given me something far greater, a reminder that kindness always finds its way back. And of course, more apple pies than I could ever eat in one lifetime.